So, after I mentioned Portal 2 in my Tower Defense Simulator video, I got a community request to take a look at Tunneler on Roblox. And this game, well, it's basically just Portal, but on Roblox. So much so that in the description of the game itself, it says, "This is not a recreation of Portal 1 or Portal 2, original concept by Valve." So, yeah. It's basically a Portal fan game, but on Roblox. Now, obviously, in the past, I've had my run-ins with blatantly stolen games, and I've also had my run-ins with games that are arguably rip-offs in a way, but are also still original products. And Tunneler is weird because it absolutely falls a lot further towards the inspired by kind of genre rather than just blatantly stolen. And considering the fact that, as far as I can tell, there's no way to pay for any sort of microtransactions or anything when it comes to the game, yeah, it definitely gets a pass from me. With all of the time and effort that clearly went into the game, though, I do kind of wish that they had gone for their own sort of aesthetic instead of just, well, I mean, come on, guys, it just looks like Portal. I don't know what else to tell you. Anyways, I don't want to sit here talking about whether or not this game is a ripoff or whether or not it's stolen for 35 minutes. I want to talk about the actual game itself, because the game itself is absolutely fantastic. Seriously, if you're watching this video right now and you have the capabilities, which I can't imagine that you don't, go play this right now, because this game is absolutely phenomenal. It took me about an hour in total to complete the first chapter, which as of right now is all that's available. It'll probably take you less time if you have functioning brain cells, as the final room of the game probably took me like half of my playtime because my brain wasn't functioning and it was late at night. But either way, the point is that this game is basically exactly what I just said earlier. It's a Portal fan game, and so because of that, if you've played the Portal games already, or even if you haven't, this is a great introduction to the sort of mechanics of those games, and if you play this and like it, I cannot recommend more that you give the Portal games a shot, because, well, they're also really, really good. For those who may be uninitiated in the basic game mechanics, basically, you have a portal gun, or a tunneler device, whatever the hell they call it in this game. I mean, for God's sakes, they even reference Portal at the very beginning of the game, saying that the tunneler device is not Aperture Science's Portal device. Right, guys. Sure it's not. Anyways, starting off the game, you eventually get the first version of the portal device, which only fires one portal, and then later on you'll get the second version, which is able to fire two portals. You have a blue portal and an orange portal, and obviously where you put the portals, if you go through one, you'll end up out of the other. The puzzles become interesting because you need to use those different portals in order to segue yourself, as well as use momentum to get up to certain places that you otherwise can't see or put portals on. So for example, you might put a portal onto a slamped block and then another one below you, jump down, and then use the momentum of jumping to launch yourself out of the sloped portal and get to somewhere where you otherwise couldn't. This is an extremely simplified version of what's going on, obviously, but it's the best example I could give. Later on, there will be a whole bunch of other mechanics that are revealed to you. Things like pushing buttons in order to fire these orbs, which you need to direct into a different spot, which will potentially activate or open a door. As well as pressure plates, which you can stand on that do certain things. And oftentimes you need to pick up a block in order to get it on the pressure point, so that way it stays down. Because if you're standing on it and then walk off, well, then the door will close. Now, while you're trying to solve the different tests in the game, you can also run into these turrets, which will, well, they're turrets. They shoot you. Get shot too many times and yeah, you're dead. There's a bunch of ways you can deal with turrets, whether it be trying to shoot them with the orbs from earlier, pick them up and spin them around until they run out of bullets, or just block their bullets in their entirety with the cubes. All viable options, and it's cool that there are multiple ways to deal with a lot of the different problems in the game. Now, one of the things you might realize right off the rip when it comes to this game is that your kind of companion that follows you around the facility as you do tests is voice acted. And as you guys know about me when it comes to voice acting on Roblox, my general consensus is if it's not going to be good, don't do it at all. And so that begs the question, is it good? Should they have done it? Hard to say. I think the voice acting for Tunneler definitely falls into a little bit of a gray area. The first time you hear it, there's no doubt about it. You'll be like, this is very clearly like a developer and not a voice actor. Or if it is a voice actor, they're not doing a super great job.
I'm here to monitor you through the testing course, so that your experience is fully recorded to be examined in the future. Before we start, it's important to understand that testing will be very dangerous, and I can't interfere with your testing experience to prevent any injuries or possible fatalities.
That being said, I've played a lot of voice-acted Roblox games where, well, it's ear-bleedingly bad and I just wanted to turn it off the entire time. And aside from maybe one point at the very end, it never gets to that point.
What did I say? What? This isn't part of the test? Grab onto something!
So it's not so bad that it makes me want to die, but it's also not stand out so good that I think it really needed to be there. I think the game could have done without it, or could have done a better job, but it's not horrible, and I don't want to get too far on their ass for it. Now, on a final note, something that was really cool that I noticed was the way that the music is handled in this game. The music is pretty low-key and for the most part just plays in the background so that way it's not dead silence. But one thing that I noticed that was really cool is that the music is actually dictated by how fast you're moving and your momentum. So if you're falling really quickly, the music will pick up until your momentum dies down, and it's directly correspondent to where you are in the track too. It's kind of like games where when you go underwater, it'll sort of mute the audio a little bit, but in this case, it's getting more intense depending on how fast you're going, and I just thought that was a really nice touch, and I'm sure that this probably went over quite a few people's heads, but it's one of those things that they didn't necessarily have to do, but they did, and I'm glad they did. Now, the last real thing that I wanted to talk about was the difficulty of the game, and I think this is obviously subjective, but for the most part, I thought it was in a pretty good spot. As with all games, when you first start out, it's going to be a lot easier and the difficulty is going to ramp up over time. I do think that the difficulty spike between pretty much everything and the last two rooms was extremely large, but even then again, looking back on it, as I said earlier, the last room where I got the most trouble on really wasn't that hard. I was just being an idiot and didn't realize that, spoilers really quick for the last room of the game if you're planning on playing this, you can go back through and grab the cube that you used in the previous room because the grid that would normally destroy the cube is currently not working and disabled, and you can tell it's not because it's sort of sparking, and that should have been an obvious tell for me, but it wasn't. And so because of that, I spent a really long time just trying to launch myself and do all this weird janky crap instead of doing the actual intended solution. And honestly, I think there's a non-zero chance I could have completed it this janky way, but it certainly would have taken a much longer time and would have been mechanically far more difficult than it was intended. Either way, like I said, the difficulty ramping is pretty good. It starts off extremely easy, it progressively gets harder, and the final areas of the game are definitely the hardest. But nothing super unachievable, all things considered, it's relatively tame. And really, I think that's sort of where we wrap up talking about Tunneler. There's not a whole lot that I can say about this game other than go play it, because it's really good. As usual with a lot of these games where I talk about and I think they're really good, the only biggest issue that I have is that there's not more. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Roblox platform, all these games that are actually good tend to not have a whole lot of content going on in them. Number one, I assume because funding is relatively low because these games that, you know, are good, nobody plays. Go fucking figure, right? But also, doing a quick search on the developer's Twitter page, it seems pretty clear that they're not exactly in the greatest state of mind to continue working on the game right now. That being said, if they do decide to continue working on the game, I can't wait because I think it's going to be really exciting, and Chapter 2, just like Chapter 1, could be something really special. So, for the most part, I'm just wishing them luck and hoping that they can deliver. Either way, that wraps up today's video. It's probably not going to be very long because I didn't have a whole lot to say, but I did want to cover this game because I think it was really cool. I think it's important to cover good games, and if you want to go play this, I highly recommend it. Either way, I'm finishing up here. So if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.